The first time she stepped onto his land, the world felt frozen, as if even the wind refused to breathe. Snow clung to her torn clothes, her hair stuck to her face, and she could barely see through the haze of exhaustion and terror that chased her across 40 miles of desperation. She didn't remember how many times she had fallen, or how many branches had cut her skin, or how many times she whispered to herself that this night finally might be the end. Her voice trembled as she approached the porch light, flickering like a dying candle, hope slipping through her fingers. And with the last thread of strength she had, she forced herself up the wooden steps. A shadow moved inside, tall and unmoving. She tried to speak, but her throat burned. Her lips cracked from the cold, and when he opened the door and stared at her with the coldest, hardest, most unreadable eyes she had ever seen, the last thing she whispered, barely audible, was, "I'm not worth much, but I can cook." Her knees gave out. Her body hit the wood. Her vision blurred as the coldest rancher in the state, a man known only as Hawk Foster, stepped out with boots heavy enough to shake the porch. She expected him to step over her, maybe close the door, maybe tell her to get off his land before the wolves got to her. No one had ever saved her before. But Hawk bent down and lifted her easily, his arms strong, his jaw tense, his expression unreadable as he carried her, inside a house that radiated heat and loneliness in equal measure. The warmth hit her like a blow. For a moment she thought she might cry from the shock of it, but her tears froze halfway down her face. Hawk said nothing as he laid her on a worn leather couch, then stoked the fire with swift, precise movements like a man used to fixing everything except himself. When he turned back toward her, his eyes drifted to the bleeding cuts along her arms, the bruised ribs, the swelling on her cheek. His expression hardened. "Who did that?" he asked, voice low. She flinched. He noticed, his jaw clenched once in silent fury. Without warning, he disappeared into another room, and she heard the sound of a cabinet being opened sharply, glass rattling. Then he returned with a first aid kit and a steaming mug of something that smelled like ginger and heat. He knelt in front of her. She tried to sit up, but pain shot across her ribs and she gasped. His hand pressed lightly but firmly against her shoulder. "Don't move," he murmured. Not gentle, not cruel, just a statement from a man who expected obedience. She watched as he cleaned her wounds with steady hands, his touch surprisingly careful for someone whose presence seemed carved out of winter itself. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Names had power. Names could be used to track. Names could be used to destroy. But she whispered, "Lena." Hawk nodded once. "You ran from someone." Not a question. She nodded. "A man?" She swallowed. Tightly. "He won't stop. Looking." Hawk set the bottle of antiseptic aside with slow precision, like he was fighting the urge to break something. "He won't find you here tonight." She wanted to ask why he cared, why he was helping, why he hadn't turned her away like everyone else had when trouble followed her steps, but her eyes drifted closed before the words escaped. The last thing she felt was a blanket being tucked around her shoulders with a gentleness that did not match the hard, cold man she'd met at the door. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of boots on hardwood. Hawk stood at the window, his silhouette dark against the pale dawn. He held a rifle loosely in one hand, watching, waiting, guarding. "You were talking in your sleep," he said without turning. She stiffened. "I'm sorry. You said you were afraid of him." Her breath caught. She remembered now. Hawk finally turned, eyes like storm clouds. "If he shows up here," he said quietly, "I'll put him in the ground." She didn't know whether to be terrified or grateful. She settled on both. As the morning light crept into the room, Hawk's expression shifted just barely. "You said you can cook." She blinked, surprised. "Yes, I can." "Then the kitchen's yours. I don't eat much, don't talk much. Just don't burn my house down." That was as close to permission or trust as a man like him could give. She followed him to the kitchen, where everything looked unused, half forgotten, dusty from neglect. She moved carefully, opening cabinets, touching pans, lighting the stove. Every movement reminded her of who she used to be, a girl who cooked, because it was the only place her world didn't fall apart. Hawk leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with those unreadable eyes. She chopped vegetables with shaking hands, stirred broth, tasted spices, letting the familiar rhythm drive out the panic still clawing at her ribs. When she slid the first bowl across the table toward him, she expected a quick bite. Maybe a grunt, maybe indifference. Instead, he sat down slowly, studying the bowl, then her, then the food again. He took one bite. Then another. Then something shocking happened. His entire body eased, shoulders dropping slightly, tension bleeding from his jaw. "You weren't lying," he said quietly. "This is good," she exhaled shakily. "Thank you. Eat with me." It wasn't a suggestion, and she did. For the first time in months, she tasted her own cooking and didn't feel sick with fear. That night he let her sleep in the spare bedroom. The door cracked open so she could see the light of the fireplace. He sat in the armchair nearby, rifle resting across his lap, watching, guarding, silent. She drifted off to the sound of crackling wood and the knowledge that for the first time in years, someone was willing to stand between her and danger. The next morning, everything changed. Hawk wasn't outside. He wasn't in the kitchen. He wasn't at the barn. She stepped onto the porch, calling his name in a whisper. "Hawk?" No answer. She wrapped her arms around herself, heart pounding with the sickening. Fear that her past had caught up and had taken him because of her. The crunch of snow behind her made her spin, but it wasn't Hawk. A stranger stood near the barn, tall, wearing a heavy coat and a smirk that made her blood run cold. "Morning, sweetheart," he drawled. "Been a long time." Her heart seized. It was one of Mason's men, one of the shadows who hunted her. She backed away, pulse roaring in her ears. "Don't," he warned, lifting a hand. "We're just here to bring you back. Home." She felt bile rise. Home. That word had been a prison, a cage, a nightmare. She turned to run, but a hand grabbed her wrist. She screamed until she realized it was Hawk. He stood behind her, eyes blazing, jaw locked, muscles coiled with lethal fury. "Touch her again," Hawk growled, "and I'll break every bone in your body." The man released her, smirking as he stepped back. "Relax, Mason just wants her returned. You make this easy, we won't." He didn't finish. Hawk moved so fast Lena didn't see the punch until the man crashed into the snow. The rancher didn't stop. He hauled the intruder up by the collar, slammed him against the barn wall hard enough to shake snow from the roof. "Tell Mason," Hawk snarled inches from his face, "if he steps foot on my land, he dies." The man spit blood, trying to laugh. "You don't know who you're messing with. Neither does he." Hawk threw him into the snow like trash. "Get out." The man scrambled to his feet and sprinted toward the truck hidden behind the trees. Lena shook violently, adrenaline crashing into fear so hard she could barely breathe. Hawk turned toward her. The rage in his eyes melted into something softer, something dangerously close to concern. "Lena," he said gently, stepping closer. She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "He found me," she whispered. "They'll all come now." "They always do." Hawk reached out, cupping her cheek with a hand rough from work and warm from fury. "Let them come," he said quietly. "I'm not giving you back." She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest, clutching his coat like she was drowning, and he was the only thing keeping her afloat. His arms wrapped around her, strong, steady, grounding her as the cold morning wind cut through the valley. "I'll protect you," he murmured into her hair. "I don't care who comes." She believed him. For the first time since fleeing Mason's compound, she actually believed she might survive. That night, fear settled into the corners of the house like smoke. Every creak made her jump. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. Hawk noticed. While she cooked dinner, he stood behind her, silent but near enough that she could feel the warmth from his body. When she chopped onions with trembling fingers, he reached out and steadied her hand without a word. When she set the table, he took the plates from her and did it himself. She didn't say thank you. He didn't need her to. After dinner, he cleaned the dishes while she sat by the fire, staring into the flames, her hands clenched in her lap. When he sat beside her, the couch dipped under his weight. He didn't touch her. He didn't try to comfort her with empty promises. He simply sat close enough that their shoulders brushed slightly, grounding her. "You're shaking again," he murmured. "I'm scared," she admitted. Hawk nodded. "Good." She stared at him, stunned. "Good? Fear keeps you sharp," he said. "And alive." His hand brushed hers accidentally, or maybe not. She didn't question the warmth that spread through her chest at the contact. When lightning flashed outside, she flinched violently, memories slamming into her, dark rooms, locked doors, Mason's voice. Hawk moved instantly, pulling her against him, his arm a band of protection around her shoulders. "You're here," he murmured. "You're safe." She buried her face in his chest, inhaling the scent of wood smoke and pine. "Hawk," she whispered, voice breaking. "I don't want to be scared anymore." His hand slid up to cradle the back of her head. "Then don't be," he murmured. "Not with me." She tilted her face up just as thunder rumbled again. His eyes locked with hers, dark, intense, full of something that felt like fire and danger and safety all at once. Their breath mingled. His hand cupped her jaw. Her fingers curled into his shirt, and then he kissed her. Hard, devastating, protective, like he had been holding back a storm of emotion too long, and she had finally unleashed it. She melted into him, letting the kiss wash away every memory of pain, every fear she had buried deep, every moment she believed she was worthless. His hands held her like she was something fragile and precious, and her heart ached with a longing she had forgotten how to feel. When he finally pulled back, both of them breathless, Hawk rested his forehead against hers. "Lena," he whispered, voice rough, "I swear on my life, no one will take you from me." She believed him, and she needed him. But just before she could respond, the distant roar of an engine echoed through the valley. Hawk froze. Lena's blood turned to ice. Headlights flickered through the trees. 2 trucks, then 3, then 5. "They're early," Hawk muttered, grabbing his rifle. "Get behind me." Lena backed toward the wall, heart crashing against her ribs. The truck skidded to a stop outside. Doors slammed. Boots crunched. Voices shouted. Dozens of them. Hawk stepped in front of her, shoulders squared, rage rolling off him like heat. "Stay low," he warned softly. The first shotgun blast shattered the window. Lena screamed. Hawk didn't flinch. He aimed, fired. The blast echoed through the house like thunder as invaders surged toward them. And in that single terrifying moment, Lena understood something with absolute clarity. She wasn't running anymore. Because the coldest rancher she had ever met was willing to burn the whole world, down to keep her safe, and Hawk was nowhere near finished.